now. Reyes. Reyes shot. Oh, he's done it. The young Spaniard has arrived at Highbury with a breathtaking goal.
Here they come again. It's Reyes. Stand up for the champions.
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunner Blog. James, good morning to you.
Good morning to you too. How are you?
I'm tired.
What? Any specific reason?
Yeah. Magpies.
Go on.
We have a nest of magpies somewhere at the back of the house or in the neighbour's garden, and the young magpies have fledged, and they're annoying little bastards, and they come into the back garden, and Lana, the young German Shepherd, does not care for magpies one bit. She doesn't like to see them. She doesn't like to hear them. She doesn't like to sense that they're around. And on the back of the house is sort of an extension and a kind of a roof where when the birds go on it, it's all, you can hear it. It's really scraggledy, like nails on a blackboard kind of thing. Not quite, but you know. But they have a tendency to jump about on this roof at somewhere between 5 and 5:30 every morning. And of course, Lana goes berserk and wakes up and goes, you know, bombing out the back garden. She needs to get out to make sure that the magpies fuck off. And so I kind of get woken up at that time, and I've been awake since then, and I'm just a bit tired. So fuck magpies. Fuck magpies is what I'm saying.
Do you act about magpies?
Do I what?
Want to know a fact about magpies?
Okay.
Magpies can recognise their own reflection. It's true.
Okay. How do they know that?
They did this experiment where they put like a bit of paint on a magpie on its neck in a way that it couldn't see it or cause it irritation. And then when they put the magpies in front of a mirror, they started like scratching at their neck trying to get the mark off. So they had obviously realised the bird they saw in the mirror was in fact themselves.
Okay, hang on.
Unusual, apparently.
Hang on a fucking second here. How does a magpie know what it looks like in the first place? Like they don't fucking have mirrors hanging out of trees, so they can just check their plumage in the morning before they go onto my roof to annoy my dog. What's going on?
Well, they've seen another magpie though, haven't they? So they've got an idea. They've got an idea of like, I look vaguely like that. But when they're in front of a mirror, apparently they're quite special because they can go, that's not just any magpie, that's me.
Well, I don't know what to say to this. I guess it is kind of impressive. Birds are intelligent creatures, even though I don't really care for them because they're far too flappy for me. But I'm not sure I buy this information. That sounds... I'm not disputing the fact that, you know, you've obviously read this and believe it to be true, but I'm finding it difficult to get on board with it.
So you're not disputing that I'm basically quite a credulous individual. That's basically what you're saying. Okay, fair.
I trust you. I trust you know that you're giving me this information in good faith. I'm just not necessarily sure that I believe it.
Well, all I would say is if you've got magpies in your garden, put a few mirrors out for them. And, you know, they'll at least they'll make an effort then.
Exactly.
They'll know.
All I've got to do is paint a few of them, and they'll be too busy scratching at their own necks to get the paint off to bother the dog in the morning. Thank you, James. You provided a solution.
There we go. Well, I'm sorry about your lack of sleep.
Well,
listen, let's at least console ourselves that you've probably had more sleep than you might have done had the result at the weekend gone in the other direction.
Oh, for sure. I guess I've had more sleep than Harry Kane or Eric Dyer or Dele Alli or any of those guys who must have been just lying awake.
Lucas Moura, he looked absolutely haunted by the experience.
Didn't he? Wasn't it wonderful?
Sort of Sammy Kufor levels of despair, really, at full time from him.
Yeah, that was, I mean, amazing.
Did you watch the game?
I did.
Did you find it a stressful experience?
I sort of did. I mean, clearly the very early goal settled things down a bit, so that made it a little less stressful. But man, when the second goal went in, because it was about to be a Liverpool win, but just 1-0, anything could happen. When the second goal went in, and I knew the game was done, I watched it with my brother, of course, who is the Mug Smasher. He's a Liverpool fan, and I felt like I had to watch it. There was part of me that was kind of okay with the idea of just hiding away or going to the cinema or doing something else on Saturday night, so I wouldn't see the result or wouldn't see the game, wouldn't have to experience it. And I remember I did that with the Ajax game, with the second leg of the Ajax game. I said, no, I'm not going to watch it. And I turned on Twitter, and whatever it was, Ajax were 2-0 up or whatever, and I thought, this is great, fantastic. Ignored Twitter, turned it back on when I thought the game was over, and it was at the point where it was 2-2 or whatever the hell way the game played out. But it was a draw, but Ajax were still going through on away goals or whatever.
Sure.
And I thought, oh, fuck, I'll just turn Twitter off again. And then when I turned Twitter on again, they just scored. So I felt in some way responsible, despite the fact it was clearly Ajax being bottling pricks. I felt a little bit responsible for that result. So in order to make up for it, and in order for the universe to right itself, and for the benefit of all of Arsenal mankind, I decided that I had to watch the game and put myself through it in order that the right result would happen. And I did, and it did, and I fucking loved it. I loved it.
Congratulations. You met your fate head on. You didn't cower. You just stood there and were like, I'll live with the consequences of this. And you absolutely won. I mean, it was
a victory for me
game.
As much as Liverpool Football Club. I think it's fair to say.
I think so. I think Liverpool were playing for you. Didn't they all, at the end, lift up their shirts and they all had T-shirts with your face printed on them and stuff like that? you were what drove them to victory.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't get to see it because you were I know you said you were going to be at a wedding.
Well, officially, I didn't get to see it. But what actually happened is that I was in Devon for this wedding, and over the course of the weekend, like in the build-up to the party on Saturday night, everyone was like, obviously, what are we going to do about the game? And a sort of splinter group managed to find like a back room at the wedding where a laptop was set up, and people would sort of take it in shifts to watch periods of the game while someone else essentially was on patrol in case the bride found out. And none of these people were Spurs fans or Liverpool fans, just a bunch of committed neutrals who really wanted to see the game. So I think, due to the shift pattern, I saw sort of the middle 20 minutes of the first half and then the last 20 minutes of the second half.
Right.
So I was watching this crucial second goal live.
What a moment.
Origi. What a moment.
What a guy. What a hero. What a legend. Seriously, like, in fairness, when you consider where he was, I mean, he was like, their Yaya Sanogo to an extent, wasn't he? And then you look at what he did in the game against Barcelona, and the game then in the final, he scores the goal to seal the final. Oh, man. And you know what was really great about it was the fact that Tottenham probably on the night were the better team, more possession. They didn't really create an awful lot. I think that, when you start a striker who's really not fit, that was a bad decision, wasn't it, starting Kane? Yeah, it was. And actually speaking to, I was chatting to a Spurs fan in the build-up to the game, and they were saying maybe our best bet isn't to start Kane. We could go with Son and Lucas, who obviously scored a hat-trick in the semi-final, bring Kane on later. Not only did they start him, they kept him on for the 90 minutes, which I suppose you can understand when you're chasing a goal, but he was well off the pace, didn't he? Yeah, it was brilliant. It was really good. And I think that's what kind of makes it a little bit sweeter for me, is the fact that they can have some regrets about the way that they played, and having been probably the better team. I mean, this gap between the end of the season and the final really didn't help in terms of the footballing spectacle. Frankly, though, I would have watched a game 50 times worse and loved it just as much as long as Liverpool won it, So it was really, really all about the result. What did you make of the the penalty. Did you see the incident for the penalty?
I haven't seen the penalty. I heard that it was potentially harsh. What do you think?
100% penalty, like 500% a penalty, just because.
But are you just saying that because of Spurs?
Yeah,
or?
yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
My brother was there going, "Ooh, that's a bit harsh, isn't it? Do you think that's harsh?" I was going, "No, of course it's not harsh. Should have sent him off." I was like, why are you being so magnanimous? 100%. It's a penalty in a Champions League final. Stop it. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy the fact you've got a penalty and stop worrying and questioning it. That was my overriding feeling.
Exactly. I mean, the delicious thing is that not only do Spurs now know the pain that we suffered by losing a Champions League final, they also have the sort of added salt in the wound of a questionable refereeing decision. So there is at least some justice there and some semblance of balance. And look, thank goodness, after the events of Wednesday night, it just became an intolerable thought. And luckily, it's not a thought we have to have again, hopefully, for some time.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of what happened on Wednesday night, it was still an unconscionable potential outcome, whether we'd won or I don't think... For me, anyway, I would have absolutely loved winning the Europa League. We didn't, of course, but it would not have made it any more acceptable for Tottenham to win the Champions League. It still would have sickened me to my very core. To the very fibre of my being, I would have been disgusted with sport and football and life. And Manchester City, I would have hated them even more than I already do. Ajax, I would have been, even less favourably disposed towards them. Jurgen Klopp, and he would have been history's greatest monster had he not won that final. So thankfully he did. And I have to say, all things considered, just leaving aside the Tottenham element of it, I was kind of happy for Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp, because they've had an amazing season, really, in terms of how they played. And we talk about the rebuild job that we need to do, and we worry about money, and we worry about how it's possible to buy and sell players effectively and build a team that might be competitive in the Premier League and in the Champions League. And to a certain extent, Liverpool have done that. They've sort of shown us that it is possible, to create a team if you get a good coach and if you're smart in the transfer market. Where is this tweet I had here from Gunner Punter, actually, who just made the point that the players that won the Champions League for Liverpool were signed from Roma, an academy player, Schalke, Southampton, Hull, Sunderland, Newcastle, Monaco, Roma, Hoffenheim and Southampton. And they won the Champions League with those players. Now, in fairness, a couple of them were very, very expensive signings. When you think of Alisson and when you think of Van Dijk, they were pretty expensive signings, but also signings made from the money that they got by selling that absolute waster to Barcelona and the other really good player to Barcelona. So they have been very intelligent and used the market well to sell players and also buy players. And if there's a blueprint for us, and if there's like a glimmer of hope that in this oil-rich, money-obsessed football world that we exist in right now, that it can be done in, I guess, something approaching a relatively normal business-like way, then they've shown us how to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And not in a vast expanse of time either. Klopp's only been there, 4 or 5 years, something like that. If that, in fact. And also, I think there's something to be taken from how they managed to turn things around. I mean, obviously, they got to the final last year. Some of their vulnerabilities were exposed in that final, particularly in the goalkeeping position, and the sort of emphasis with which they have corrected those issues and solved some of their defensive problems is quite impressive, and the speed at which they've managed to do that. Now, granted, spending an awful lot of money has played its part, but I think it's also about identifying the right personnel. They've obviously been really skillful at that when you look at their use of the market. But it feels kind of fair, doesn't it? Having run City so close and missed out on the Premier League, it feels almost right that they should finish with some piece of major silverware this season, it feels like a sort of appropriate balance given those two teams' performances across the season.
Absolutely. And, of course, it denies Tottenham a trophy, which they can...
And that, again, feels fair to me.
Absolutely. There's no justification in the world for Tottenham winning the Champions League. It would kind of make a mockery of it, wouldn't it, when your champions of Europe haven't been champions of England for over 50 years, whatever it is. And what is it, 1961? So 2001, 50 years, is it? What year is it? What year is it, James?
It's 2019.
I'm so old. I can't remember what year it is.
I can't work it out now because it goes across the millennia. It gets a bit trickier to do the sums, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A long time.
Coming up to 60 years.
Ooh,
so
hell of a long time.
Yeah, exactly. So they can stick their no trophy right up their bum. The other thing that I thought was quite interesting, I wrote about it on the blog today, were the amount of people who were like, well, what are you giving Tottenham a hard time for? We lost our final and we fucked up our season. They had a much better season than us, blah, 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 blah. It's like, what's wrong with people like that? Can you understand that mindset?
Not particularly. I mean, I sort of think they're a rival, aren't they? It's sort of fair game. It didn't stop them taking pot shots at us for 20 years when they weren't doing as well as us, and I think it will always be that way. Whatever almost the relative positions of the teams are, there'll always be that element of schadenfreude.
For sure. I mean, you have to take pleasure in the failings and miseries of other players and other teams, because that's just the way that football works. That's how it goes. We all, when a guy, it's sort of fundamental to the game and to our enjoyment of it. Certainly, in my opinion, there was a moment in the final early on when I can't remember who it was, probably Kane, but maybe Eriksen or somebody had a chance to shoot a goal and he blasted it over the bar. And as one, all the Liverpool fans in the bar I was watching in, and myself included, went, "Way!" as you do when a guy shoots the ball over the bar. This is just an extension of that. Taking the piss out of Tottenham is just that's how it goes. And you don't have to see these things in isolation. You can absolutely believe and think and understand that we're not in the best shape that we've been in for quite some time. The final against Chelsea was a fucking disaster. I think now that the looming terror of Tottenham winning the Champions League is out of the way, I think that will maybe come back into focus a little bit, just how bad the Europa League final was, because we sort of had this, oh God, that really was terrible, but now please just make sure Liverpool win
Brace
the Champions
yourselves,
League. Yeah, exactly. And now we can step back from it and say, that's absolutely shite to lose 4-1 in a final against Chelsea. And the way that we blew the top four, that was absolutely shite. And we've got so many things going on in terms of, what we need to do, how we need to do them, questions about the coach, questions about the owner, what's our trajectory, how are we going to get ourselves back on track. All of those things are absolutely right. They're absolutely relevant to our Arsenal experience, but to my mind, completely separate from Tottenham losing in the Champions League final, because that's just something we should all enjoy and celebrate and point fingers at and laugh like Nelson from The Simpsons.
I thought you were going to say, now that the horror of Tottenham potentially winning the Champions League is out the way, maybe we'll reflect more kindly on the Europa League, but it's quite the opposite. It's like, no, maybe we'll be like, oh, actually, yeah, that was really bad. I think that's probably true. It's almost like now because we had that greater fear kind of hanging over us, we sort of almost couldn't confront the awful reality of what we'd already faced. But now we've got plenty of time to do that and dissect it. But at least we're all still here to do that. Had Spurs triumphed, who knows if this podcast would even still be going, Andrew?
That's a very good point. The world could possibly have ended.
That is surely one of the signs of the apocalypse, Spurs winning the Champions League.
Yeah, God. But they didn't.
They didn't.
They didn't.
Mickey.
Look, you got to throw in an odd Mickey. So look, that was great. That was great. That sort of ended the season on just a little bit of a high, because we're all Arsenal fans. Well, most of the people listening to this are Arsenal fans. I know we do have some listeners who are not
spies.
But that's fine, and I'm sure many of them will have it's something any football fan can identify with. I'm sure Manchester United fans were all rooting for Tottenham because they don't want Liverpool to win, same as Manchester City fans were probably rooting for Tottenham as well, to make sure that Liverpool didn't win. Everton fans, of course. So it works. It's something everybody can identify with, and we're the happy ones, and I think that's something that we should be thankful for.
Lovely to think as well that the result also will have made Manchester United fans a bit unhappy. So thanks for bringing that up. That's a lovely little... That's a cherry on the cake, isn't
exactly. There's just layers and layers and layers of how good this is. And when you think then about, the Tottenham players and how sad they must be. Oh, it really does warm my heart. It does.
Yeah, that was a relief. Let's put it like that. It was a real relief. And I think, Spurs reaching Champions League final, it was so kind of miraculous they got there given the circumstances. I feel relatively assured that that's not something we're going to have to face with particular regularity.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, that's another part of it, isn't it? This was their chance.
Yeah.
This was their moment to take destiny into their own hands. And they Spursed it right the fuck up.
Despite Harry Kane's best attempts to fall over near the goal.
Oh, he's just intolerable, isn't he? He really is. I know, I get it. You're a goal down and he was desperate and all that kind of stuff. But he does that all the time and quite often gets penalties, which is really irritating. So, yeah, it's good. It's good. On every conceivable level, it is good. What else is there to talk about? Well, of course, it's a bittersweet weekend, because the suite that we have from Barcelona, do you hear me, from Liverpool winning the Champions League, was very much offset earlier in the day by the very sad news about Jose Antonio Reyes. It's a real shock, wasn't it? I mean, it's something... I don't know, I find something a bit weird and surreal about the whole thing. Like, when a former footballer dies, they tend to be older. And people of that era, I guess, will connect with those departures more than perhaps we would. Whereas this was a player of our era. He was somebody who was a big part of the Invincibles, and somebody who was part of, the last big success that we had at this football club. So really, really sad.
Yeah, really sad. And I mean, he's a player who, for me in particular, has always held sort of a certain mystique, because I don't think I've ever been more excited about a transfer than I was about when we signed Jose Antonio Reyes. And I think it's because Arsene Wenger had a reputation at this point for being an immaculate identifier of talent. If he said somebody was good, they almost certainly were extremely good.
Yeah.
And he had such a reputation for bringing in bargains that when they really pushed the boat out and broke our transfer record to sign Reyes, you just thought, well, this guy's going to be the best player in the world. And that's not really an exaggeration. I thought we're going to have something truly, truly, truly special on our hands. And we definitely saw flashes of that ability during his time here. It didn't quite pan out as planned, but really sad news, a real shock, incredibly young, 35, and yeah, that definitely did cast a bit of a downer on the day.
It was an amazing signing when you think back to it. I remember there was sort of whispers going around a couple of days before it happened, and then, there might have been a newspaper article or a picture of David Dean on his way to Sevilla to do the transfer. Do you remember there was what was the guy? He was the chairman of Sevilla. He was always good for Del Nido. That's the guy. Yeah. And we had made an initial bid apparently, and he said something along the lines of that wouldn't even buy you his boots. But when you think back, this was a team that had just done the double the season before, just missed out on the title in 2003 because of what happened towards the end of the season at Bolton and what have you, but still won the FA Cup. And it was a team with Bergkamp, Henry, Pires, Ljungberg, Kanu, Wiltord, a young and upcoming Jeremy Aliadier, who Wenger was really fond of, and we didn't know at that point that the injuries were going to have such an impact on his career. We also had the stadium project looming. Money was about to get really, really tight because of that. And we went out and broke our transfer record on Reyes in January at a time when nobody really buys players, and it was amazing. It was so exciting, and I think that played into the hopes and the belief that we had that this guy was going to be something really special. Because if you're going out and buying him in those circumstances, to put him into a team with those players, which means that you're going to have to leave one or two of them out. I know maybe Kanu and Wiltord were heading towards, the end of their Arsenal careers anyway, but it just really spoke to a desire from the football club to build a team and build an attacking, exciting team full of flair players. And yeah, look, it didn't work out as well as we might have liked, but he did give us some really special moments.
Yeah, and in fact, I remember when the club sort of announced the plans for how the Emirates Stadium would look visually, they did a sort of mock-up of the team running out onto the pitch. And I remember that Reyes was one of the key figures in that particular mock-up. It was like Henry, Cole, Reyes. Funnily enough, it was a bunch of people who sort of never really played in the stadium. But yeah, he was absolutely integral to our future plans at that point. And I think by many people was seen as sort of the successor to Dennis Bergkamp. Even though his football was mainly played on the wing for us, I think there was this idea that he and Henry would become the de facto strike partnership. Didn't quite happen for a number of reasons. But it's funny, looking back at his career, I think of him as someone who sort of underachieved given that enormous potential he had and the expectations. But in terms of what he won, it's quite a list. La Liga with Real Madrid, the Premier League with Arsenal, the FA Cup, 5 Europa League titles, UEFA Super Cup in there too, Segunda Division with Sevilla. Plenty of trophies, plenty of medals in there, and I think he was absolutely beloved in Seville, particularly after 2 spells there. Yeah,
he really was. And yeah, it is, he won a lot. And actually, you think, there was something sort of surreal about the way that he left the club, of course. There was that radio interview, you remember, where he was tricked. And there was the stuff that went on with Thierry Henry and Luis Aragonés. And, he never really properly settled, did he, in England? And I think at the time, a lot of us would have thought, what's his problem? What's the problem here? He's getting well paid. He's at one of the biggest clubs in Europe. What's his issue? And sometimes I think we really do forget that players are people, they're human beings, and despite the fact things could be very comfortable for you, despite the fact you've got enough money to live where you want and buy all the nice things, if you're homesick or if you just don't feel like you've settled in a country, it can be very difficult to live there. And if you come from Sevilla with plenty of sunshine and nice warm days, and all of a sudden you're transported to, a part of the world where winters can be long and cold and dreary and difficult, it can be a challenging thing. And I think that's kind of what happened. I'm not sure there was as much understanding for that, maybe as there should have been, but then people were just upset because we knew we had a talented player who didn't quite make it, And then, of course, didn't we swap? No, he went on loan to. Did we do a swap?
To Real Madrid. Yeah,
swap
Baptista.
Loan deal for Baptista. Is that how that happened? If I remember right.
Yeah, I mean, if you saw that transfer rumour in this day and age, you'd be like, swap deals never happen, let alone swap loan deals. But that is precisely what happened, and neither player ended up staying permanently with those clubs, because he was moved permanently to Atletico, wasn't he?
Yeah, he went to Atletico Madrid. Yeah, the next
at the end of that season.
Yeah. But he did score, didn't he? Didn't he score the winning goal for Real Madrid to win them La
win the
Liga?
league. Yeah, a very good goal as well. I think he came off the bench to do that. And then he came back to Arsenal briefly in pre-season, and there was some talk, I think something was like, we'd like him to be part of the squad. And then Atletico came in and he jumped at the chance to go back to Spain. And that was that, really. But yeah, I mean, an interesting career, and one certainly that I think made an impact in some big matches. I mean, there are definitely iconic Reyes moments, aren't they, that sort of, will...
Well, I mean, the first goal, the one that he scored against Chelsea, was just, an incredible goal. One of those that's so pleasing on the eye aesthetically, isn't it? A ball that continues to rise as it hits the net. It's on the up, and he just really smashed that one. And of course, the goal in that 5-3 game against Borough, which is unquestionably one of the great Highbury games. An amazing comeback from 3-1 down to win 5-3, but just that there was a sort of excitement about the team at that point, wasn't there? Because even though we were 3-1 down, you looked around, you thought, hey, that's not a big enough lead for you, Middlesbrough, because we've got the players who can turn that around. And it really spoke to the team, didn't it?
Yeah. And it's a sensational goal as well. Lovely little turn at real speed and a brilliant finish off the right foot. And yeah, that's one of the iconic invincible moments. And I think arguably, Reyes was actually named the Premier League's Player of the Month in the first month of that season, that August. And he was flying. But we all remember, of course, what happened in the 50th game, the United match and the treatment he received there. And, I think arguably that affected his form in a way that he never quite recovered from in English football.
Yeah, I think so. And to this day, I don't really like the idea that kicking him off the park was a kind of badge of honour for the Neville brothers. I understand football is a physical game, and it should be a physical game, but when it's targeted violence against one individual the way that was, that's just not right. And if it did have a really detrimental effect on his career, you could ask questions about, his how robust he might be, physically or mentally. But, sometimes when violence is inflicted upon you, it can be traumatic. And I think probably now I have a more understanding outlook on his decision to move away from English football because of, everything that was going on. The home life, the difficulties with Thierry Henry, who was, the star player who, let's be brutally honest about it, threw his weight around, and not just with Reyes. He was known for throwing his weight around, and in spite of all the goals, that was a problem. And then the homesickness, and then, being booted around. You can understand now a bit more as to why he felt his career might be better served back in Spain. Yeah.
You can. But, he, as I say, he does leave us with some amazing memories sort of sprinkled across his brief time in North London. And, yeah, the moment that I remember seeing Reyes at London Colney, that photograph of him in front of the Arsenal sign holding up a shirt with Arsene Wenger, and it really felt like the sky was the limit at that point, and it was such an exciting time for the club that I can't help but reflect very fondly on that.
Yeah, I found Cesk's tribute quite touching as well on Instagram, talking about how he was his first big friend, and the two Spanish guys at Arsenal. And yeah, look, it's a very sad occasion, and all we can do is send thoughts to family and friends, and remember the good things that he did for us, and some of those good things were very good indeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, what will we do? Because I think there's not a great deal going on from an Arsenal point of view, but there are a lot of questions. So will we take a break and do some questions?
Yes, let's do that, shall we?
Let's do that. Okay, we'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer questions that you send to us on Twitter at Gunnerblog and at Arseblog. Also on the Arseblog Facebook page, facebook.com/the Arseblog. I remembered today. And also on the Arseblog Patreon member Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. Just as we were talking towards the end there, James, about Europa League final, I thought I'd give Sarri out just a quick search on Twitter. And I like this.
Is it still out there?
It's still out there, but this one is good. If Sarri goes to Juve, I blame Chelsea fans. All the bullshit you fans gave this man, and Jorginho for that matter, and you assholes finished 3rd in the Premier League and win a European trophy. You want Sarri out now? You Chelsea fans. You deserve Lampard and a UCL group stage exit. To which somebody replied, Sarri threw on the ground, then kicked our logo. Is that the guy you want to coach us? Absolute unprofessionalism. Sarri out.
Wow, he threw on the ground.
He threw on the ground.
And kicked our what?
Our logo. He kicked our logo.
He kicked our logo.
Our precious, precious logo. He kicked it with his foot. His foot. His Italian smoking foot.
Something beautifully corporate about calling it the logo rather than the crest or the badge.
The badge, yeah.
Fascinating story, Sarri, isn't it? You know, they've hounded him out all season and he's ended up with trophy and Champions League qualification. If he goes to Juve, I think he's sort of really had the last laugh in that situation.
He pretty much does, yeah. Absolutely. So
that they're sort of guaranteed to win the title in Italy the way it seems to go.
Yeah.
I thank you for that. I enjoyed it.
No problem.
Been brave enough to look up the Emery out hashtag, but I'm sure there is some entertaining reading of its own under that.
Yes, we'll leave that for for people to do on their own time.
Yes. Shall we have a question?
Yeah, let's.
This one is from Khalil Kieran's, who's Lord Khalil on Twitter. That makes sense. And Khalil says, goodly morning. How much poo are we putting on the Meunier rumours? Seems odd to spend so much on a right-back when we have Bellerin, or is it a sign Bellerin could be sold? That would be a badly morning type of day.
That would be a terribly morning, not just a badly morning. I mean, when you look through the squad and you think about the players that we definitely should be keeping, Hector Bellerin is very close to the top of the list. I mean, I don't really believe there's a great deal in this Meunier story. I mean, there can't be, can there? How can we possibly be thinking that with a limited budget we're going to spend, what was it, the figure? It was about 25 million pounds, I think.
30 million euros.
30 million euros, exactly. 30 million euros on a gigantic right back. A big giganto right back.
He's a very tall right back.
He is, isn't he? He's like a
6'3",
sort of,
I think.
Yeah, an Ivanovic kind of guy. And I, in fairness, I quite liked Ivanovic just because, the having a big hulking guy at right back is quite fun sometimes. But I don't see that this could be anywhere near the top of our priority list. And based on the budget that we have, I think it's probably agent talk to maybe get him a better deal somewhere else. There's talk of Manchester United as well, isn't there? So
yeah. Let me ask you a different question. Do we need to buy a right back this summer?
Potentially, yes.
Because Hector Bellerin did his cruciate, didn't he, in January?
Yeah.
So he's probably not going to be back until
September, October, and then you want to ease him into the season a bit, don't you? You can't just say, off you go again, Hector, because he's going to break down, because that would be normal.
So that leaves our right back options. Given that Lichtsteiner we expect to go, Jenkinson we think is surely certain to go, that leaves Maitland-Niles, and I can't even really bring myself to say it, but possibly Mustafi. Andrew?
Yeah, I'm here. I was just trying not to die on the inside when you said that.
Andrew, no, come back.
No!
I didn't mean it. So I think we might well need one, especially if Mustafi goes, which we are sort of all holding out.
I do agree that we probably need a right back, but what I would say is we don't necessarily need a
30
million euro right back.
Giant right back.
Yeah, giganto. You don't need a right back on stilts that costs that much money. So I wonder if we might, maybe this is the opportunity or one of the opportunities for us to outsmart the market by identifying a young player, perhaps at a club that isn't in the Premier League. It might be abroad. It might be in the Championship. It could be even lower down. Who could come in and understudy, I guess, to Hector Bellerin. I suppose the complicating factor is that whoever you bring in is probably going to have to start the season.
Yes.
Because Bellerin won't be fit. So is it too much of a baptism of fire? If you wanted to just sort of bring in a young right back, maybe you could play him, in the Europa League games and blood him that way. I don't know.
So you're saying we need an experienced head, like a Lichtsteiner?
Yeah, maybe we could get one of those guys on a free transfer.
That worked out well.
Yeah, it really did. No, it's another part of this summer's puzzle, isn't it? It really is.
Well, Five and Hill on the Discord has asked, is it time for your transfer predictions? I mean, is it time for our transfer predictions?
Is it time for our transfer predictions? What exactly do we need to predict? This is where I'm getting off.
We normally predict what positions we'll buy, how much we'll spend, and how much we'll get for sales.
Okay. Do you want to do it?
Shall we do it?
Yeah.
This is planning, guys. This is planning in action.
Okay. I'm just going to write some stuff down.
I mean, and then we write it down, and then you lose the bit of paper.
Then I lose the paper, and nobody can remember. No, usually one of the listeners remembers what we've said. So where are we going to buy? I think, okay, I'll go first on this. We're going to buy a central defender. We're going to buy a left back. We're going to buy a central midfielder.
All right.
We're going to buy an attacking midfielder of some kind.
Right.
And I think we're going to buy a forward. So I think that's 1, 2, 3. That's 5 players. And that's kind of... Yeah, I think we're going to have to buy a right back as well. So there's 6.
6.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to say a central defender, a central midfielder, a winger/striker.
Oh, you're going for the 2-in-1 here.
Yeah.
Get value for money.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to say a versatile defender. So like someone who could maybe play both fullback positions.
Who?
4.
Yeah. Who? Well, like James Milner.
James Milner. We're going to buy James Milner. I don't know, but I'm going to say
4 players?
Actually, and then we're going to buy like a Guendouzi, like a sort of 17, 18-year-old that we don't expect to be part of the squad.
But what position? What position? Do you know?
It doesn't matter. He's going to be the position of child. Excellent child. He's going to be attacking child, okay?
Attacking excellent child.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I like
Put that into your Football Manager filters.
Bring me an excellent child. That could be misconstrued very, very easily.
And now we have to predict what our total spend will be and then what our revenue will be.
Oh, my God. We probably should have given this some thought. Our total spend is going to be like 60 million?
That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
Okay. All right,
60 million.
I'm going to say 65. Is that mental?
Well, I mean, that could be the total spend, because we could, of course, bring money in for players if we sold a couple.
Oh, and then we make a list of people we think we'll sell, I think, and then we have a total value.
Yeah, actually,
this is historically
if we
what's
have
happened.
a list of people that I think we're going to sell, we'll have a squad with about 8 players in it by the time we're finished this, to be honest.
Well, this is the game.
This is too complicated, this game, right now. I need more time to...
It's like Monopoly, isn't it?
I need more time to ponder, and we can see, what might happen in terms of outgoings. Did you see the story? I know many people have asked us about this. I can't remember if I have a question, but I will ask it. The story going around this morning about Mesut Ozil.
Yeah, Peter Hust asked that question.
Right.
Morning, gents. What's your take on the story about Ozil criticising Emery? A lip-reading story.
It's brilliant. I love a good lip-reading story. Apparently, somebody has deciphered the fact that when he was taken off in the Europa League final, much to his displeasure, as I think we could all see, he really was not very happy about it. Mesut Ozil sat down on the bench and was, we could see he was saying something to somebody, but apparently the story is that he was saying to Emery, "You're not a coach. You're not a coach," in Turkish.
Well, there you go. You are not a coach.
What a great story. A lip-reading story in Turkish as well.
It's exciting. I don't know.
I like
how
this
much
variety,
Yeah, it's been through a few filters, that particular story, hasn't it? It's gone to Turkey, it's gone to the lip readers. They've done their work, it's made its way back to us. It's like Turkish whispers.
Turkish whispers. Give it a couple of weeks and it'll be like Ozil said, "Emery, I will smite you at dawn for the way you've treated me today."
That'll probably be next season. He'll start saying things like that on the bench, I would think. Yeah, I mean, who knew that Emery and Ozil didn't particularly get on? Who could ever have thought that might be the case?
Yeah.
It's certainly been a shock to me. I mean, look, who knows who's going to leave? Who knows if Mesut Ozil is going to leave? But
I think we had
if I had to put a number on it, I think we'll recoup about 16 million from sales.
Yeah. I mean,
Is that generous?
I guess maybe it depends who we sell, because
You've got to get something from Mohamed El Neni these days.
yeah. But we do have a question here. It comes from Shinji Ikari, who's at Rai2UK on Twitter. It says, "Do you fear we could really lose Lacazette in the summer, and what would be the ramifications of that?" There were stories last week. Again, we have to take everything with a bit of a pinch of salt. But a story last week in Sport, the Catalan newspaper, to say that Barcelona are on the lookout for a number 9, and they have identified both Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Alexandre Lacazette as potential candidates for that role. The fact that we don't have Champions League football makes those potential destinations a bit more attractive, I would say, for our two key strikers, neither of whom I would be inclined to sell. But then there were stories about Lacazette being in Barcelona, and he was spotted having, lunch at a restaurant. As someone said to me on Twitter, he could have just been going to Primavera Sound, which was on at the weekend, going for a gig.
True.
But,
It's a lovely place to visit, Barcelona.
It is a lovely place to visit, but you can't help but be a little bit cynical in this day and age. But yeah, so I mean, there's a player who could bring us, I don't know, certainly at least what we paid for him.
Oh yeah, you'd like to think more than that. But I mean, you'd like to think he'd stay. That's what you'd really like to think.
Yeah.
But we definitely do feel a bit vulnerable now without Champions League football. And of the two, Lacazette certainly would be a more sensible recruit for Barcelona, I think, given given his age. He would retain a little bit of value at least, while Aubameyang's probably unlikely to do that for much longer. I think stylistically as well, Lacazette, I can see him fitting in there, which sort of troubles me. They need a centre forward, and there's a lot of names on that list, but I want to see him stay. I want to see him stay.
Yeah.
Even to the tune of 70 million quid, I think.
But you could reinvest that 70. It's it's a very, very difficult one because you immediately signal a sort of, not a lack of ambition. And, we've talked about, how...
We talked about Liverpool in part one.
Yeah, exactly.
Regeneration.
And in fairness, Suarez was a player that they did not want to sell, but they sold him for big money. And, they didn't... I don't know what exactly they spent that money on when they sold him. Can you remember? I can't remember.
I think they spent it on people like Firmino, didn't they? Yeah.
Right. Okay. Maybe they did. Yeah. So look, we can't ignore the desire or the need to regenerate by selling some of our players. It's just that it's very difficult to get your head around the idea of selling either one of Lacazette or Aubameyang because they're basically the best thing about this team right now, and it would be really, I think, demoralising for either one of or the other of them to see their strike partner sent, and I think it would be really demoralising for the players who are actually staying and who have got a job to do next season if one of the best players is sold. Maybe you offset it if you bring in, good players in the transfer market, but as yet, it's hard to take that leap of faith that we could do the right thing with the money if we got it. We don't know that yet because we've no evidence whatsoever that this particular backroom setup is capable of doing that. I think we all more or less accept that our transfers last summer were driven by Sven Mislintat. So now it's, well, who's going to be making the decisions? So,
I mean, one thing I do think is if Barcelona are interested in Lacazette, when you look at the Suarez deal and particularly the Coutinho deal, there is a bit of a track record there of them paying over the odds. And I think, 70 million or something like that feels like, yeah, that's sort of the fair market value potentially. But I think if we could squeeze them for more, then I think it does change the proposition a little bit. Like if you could somehow get them to go to 100 million, I think in that position we kind of have to sell because it becomes such an extraordinarily good deal that you kind of have to take it. So I hope that if there is real interest there, I just hope we make it difficult for them and sort of force them to push the boat out as they have in the past, because we need to give ourselves the strongest platform to rebuild if we are going to lose someone like that.
Yes. Okay, let me just follow on from this, and it comes back to the question that we were talking about before. From Dwayne Lynch at Lynchy D, this is our predictions kind of question. He says, knowing everything you know about Arsenal, the ownership and the budget, the sheer volume of surgery that needs to be done, what is the minimum life-saving surgery that we need to do? And this is based on the assumption that, Unai Emery is going to be the man in charge next season.
What's the minimum?
What's the minimum we need to do with this squad?
To do what? To achieve what?
To
get into the top four?
Yeah, let's go there.
The minimum is we need a new centre-half. Definitely. I think we need a new central midfielder. And I think we need a winger. I think that's the minimum in terms of incomings. I think we do need fullbacks, but I think if Ainsley Maitland-Niles progressed dramatically as a right back, we might be okay. We might get away with Kolasinac. But as I think without a centre half, without a centre midfielder, without the option of a winger, I think we're going to struggle to improve.
Is there anything I think I'd stick a left back on the minimum that we have to do.
I mean, there's definitely a case for that.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would make sure we do in terms of players departing? What's the minimum we need to do there? What's a must, absolutely no question about it, departure this summer?
For me, Sel Mustafi is number one on that list.
Yeah.
Which, I just think he's calamitous, and I also think that his relationship with the fans has a certain toxicity to it at this point, and I think it would just be best to kind of have a bit of a reset there. Mesut Ozil's not far behind for me, but I think if you said to me, you absolutely have to do it, then what is the minimum? The minimum is Mustafi goes.
There doesn't have to be just one minimum. I think both Mustafi and Ozil. I think we've seen enough from Mustafi as a defender to know that we need an upgrade, and in order to get an upgrade, we're going to have to try and cash in on somebody. We're not going to get what we paid for him or anywhere close, I don't think, but we should still get a fee, and that needs to be reinvested back into the defence. And I do think the Ozil thing it will just continue to be a cloud over everything as long as he's here.
There is a financial thing as well. Potentially shifting him enables you to get a better class of centre half, a better class of central midfielder, a better class of left back by redistributing that salary. Yeah, the Mustafi and Ozil, it almost feels like it's almost like a mood thing at this point. I mean, obviously there are sort of technical issues with both players and their fit into the team, but it really feels like for the group, it would be good for them to go. So yeah, I mean, the scary thing is like the list of signings I thought we would make and the list of the bare minimum we need to make is not very different.
There's a fucking hell of a lot of work to do.
It's so much work to do, because you could make the case that Arsenal need a goalkeeper, a centre half, a right back and a left back, a central midfielder to replace Ramsey, a central midfielder potentially to replace Ozil, a winger, a forward to replace Danny Welbeck. You could argue they need all those players, and it would be difficult to contest that.
That's why I think maybe Maitland-Niles will continue as a right back.
Yeah.
Because I've seen questions from people about whether or not we could move him into central midfield, which is where I think Arsene Wenger spoke about him playing. It's a very confused situation with Maitland-Niles, because he himself talked about being a winger, how he wants to be, a forward player, and that's where he spent a lot of his early career, and certainly when he went to Ipswich, I think that's where he played. But given what else we have to do, we need to prioritise the way we spend our money on the positions that really, really matter, and I think those are, in defence, centre half and left back, in central midfield. Because Ramsey's going, we need a Ramsey replacement. I think they'll, with the goalkeeper, I think it'll be Martinez or Iliev will make the step up, or they'll get like a cheap guy on loan for a season if they need, or they feel they need more experience.
Yeah,
I don't see
Rob Green, it's going to be available.
Jesus Christ. And look, there are players coming in to the squad. This young Brazilian kid Martinelli, I'm not quite sure how ready he's going to be, whether he's coming in to be part of the first team squad. I'm not sure if that's the case, but Reece Nelson, of course, is coming back. So there are ways of making up the numbers.
Sure.
Joe Willock, for example, could take Mohamed El Neni's place in the squad, if El Neni's moved on. But yeah, there's a lot to do. A scary amount, I think, yeah. And also, we're into June now. I mean, this is it. This is the summer. Because of the lateness of the two finals, you sort of forget. But we've made signings by now plenty of times in recent years. That's true, actually. That's true. I mean, look, I suppose we had to get the final out of the way, if you like, before we knew what kind of a budget we were going to have, whether we were going to have Champions League money to attract Champions League players. And what we've got is Europa League money to attract some Europa League players.
Presumably that has quite a big impact. I mean, I imagine there were lists drawn up for either eventuality, surely. And after Wednesday, some of those names that are right at the top of the list will have to be crossed out.
Yeah, I guess so. Here's a question from Don Weedle, who's at It's Tuesday RN right now. He says, how much does Europa League football affect who we decide to loan out and keep? I can see a lot of youth getting minutes there. Willock and Nketiah come to mind.
Well, I think the model of Emil Smith-Rowe tells you a little bit about how he might do it next year, because he was with the squad for the first half of the season, involved in the Europa League group stage, and then loaned out in January. And obviously, look, injury prevented him having much impact in the Bundesliga. But I think we might see that formula replicated next year with someone like Joe Willock. Because, I think, we probably did use the first team players a little bit more than we needed to in the Europa League group stage. I understand that, because I think Emery at that time was trying to implement certain things and, get a grip on the group. So it made sense to keep those senior players with the squad. But next year, I think we will see a bit more youth involved. Then in January, once it gets to the business end of that competition, they can go out and play elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. But, yeah.
This question...
Go on. No. It was probably just a nothing point about the Europa League and our approach, but I remember we spoke about it on the last podcast, I think. About what way we'd approach it, and I go very young in the group stages to blood. I mean, if we are going to refresh from within with youth players, or we're going to bring some young players in, we have to give them playing time, and that's the perfect way to do it.
This question is sort of a philosophical question from Benjano Stex. And Benjano says, expanding on the idea from last week regarding selling out our principles for no reward, how would you guys feel if the club was bought by some mega rich person or people who pumped in money a la City or Chelsea? If it brought us trophies, would we care? Or is it better to, as we do now, follow the sustainability model for when the arse inevitably falls out of the Premier League's funding, allowing us to stay relatively unharmed?
Yeah, look, it's that moral quandary. As much as I dislike Kroenke, I remember being very, very uneasy about Usmanov. And he came along at a time when we were all pointing fingers at Chelsea and singing songs about Chelsea buying success and all that kind of stuff. And Usmanov was, from the same ilk as Abramovich. It is a really difficult one. I think... as we talked about earlier, Liverpool's owners have shown that you can build and you can compete. They have put some of their own money in, but they've also run the club much better than our club has been run in recent years. How would I feel if, like, a nation state with loads and loads of money, but with a terrible record on human rights or all those sort of things came along? I think I'd feel pretty bad about it. I would.
Yeah.
I don't know what
I could... winning trophies?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I wouldn't... It's not that I wouldn't enjoy winning trophies, but I do feel in some ways like they would be probably a bit tainted in my mind.
Yeah.
As every, Manchester City, what was the reason everybody wanted Manchester City to win the Premier League rather than Liverpool? It was because you can write it off, because it doesn't matter. And it would be nice, personally, it would be nice if we could win and it mattered, or without any caveats or without anybody being able to say, well, you only won it because of this, that and the other. Even when we were going up against Manchester United in that fantastic period of rivalry between the two clubs, there was a sense that United were somehow not financially doped, but because of their wealth, what we did was even more special, right? Yeah,
it was a bit of a mismatch economically, certainly.
Yeah. And over time we've come to realise that Manchester United had that funding because, well, they were smart. They were smarter than everybody else before everyone else, and they built a huge commercial behemoth which really drove success at that football club for a really long time, and it was their own money. They generated their own money. They weren't financed by sugar daddies or oligarchs or nation states or any of that sort of stuff. And there's sort of a purity in as much as anything can be pure at the top level of football or sport or whatever. But yeah, look, it would be a difficult thing to get your head around, because you're then faced with a choice of supporting the club you've supported your entire life, or on moral grounds, on a matter of principle, because of your distaste for the owner or where the money comes from, or all the various things that could be associated with that, of walking away and turning your back on it. And I don't think, as much as we all like to think we're good, honest, decent people who want to do the right thing as much as possible, that's a very difficult thing to do. You know, give up something that's been a part of your life for such a long time. That's really difficult. I know some people will be able to say, that's it, there's the line for me, that is the line and I can't go beyond it. But most people won't be able to do that. So you're just going to have to compartmentalize it or become a mental gymnast and get on with it. So,
yeah, I mean, it's not a situation that we face, but I would be fascinated to know. I think I believe you when you say, you know, I think it would feel tainted for me, but just observing the Chelsea fans I know and the Manchester City fans that I know, I think it's fair to say the majority of supporters would probably make their peace with it, you know, in whatever way they needed to. It is incredible the sort of supplicating effect that success can have on a person's ethics. And that's not to be accusatory, and I think I would be as vulnerable to that as everybody else. It does. I don't think that Man City fans feel guilt about their success.
No, they don't. I mean, they get really, really defensive about it. They're
yes, and that is telling.
You know, I mean, I think I could probably say, you know, if that were to happen to Arsenal, you know what? We've won the Premier League and I enjoy that, but that doesn't mean all of a sudden I support our owners. Yeah. I think you can straddle the fence if you like. You know, you can acknowledge.
But it's also sort of what you choose to believe. Like a Manchester City fan can say, you know, they can swallow that soundbite. Did you hear their chairman saying, well, look, we haven't bought the world's most expensive defender. We haven't bought the most expensive midfielder in Britain. We haven't bought the most expensive striker, which is a very clever observation. But of course, their sort of collective spending is absolutely enormous. But you could choose to believe that, or you could choose to believe, you know, this is down to the genius of Pep Guardiola or the brilliance of Raheem Sterling rather than a kind of financial power. I don't know. It's a really, really complex one because, you know, an owner like that would bring a lot of what we talk about wanting for Arsenal in terms of spending, in terms of sporting ambition, in terms of sort of trying to make us a global force, a huge club, you know, recognised across the world. We all talk about wanting those things, but at what price do we want them? You know, it is a very, 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 very complex one because there is that argument of, you know, if you can't beat them, join them. Yeah, and that might be the world that we live in now.
It might be.
I'm not sure I like it.
Yeah. I had a question here and I can't find it, so I'm going to ask you this one. We'll fire through a few quite quickly. Actually, before I do, where is this one? On the Facebook. I opened it up. Oh my goodness. I had it right here from Jack Wild, who said, there's no point you say every podcast you forget to check the Facebook questions. So there, Jack. Here's one from me. Now that Spurs have typically spurs things up, have you cancelled your emigration to living in a hole in the outback, never to return to European shores again? Yes, Jack Wild, I have. So I hope you're happy now. I've answered your question on Facebook. Here's the other question I was going to ask you while I looked for the other question that I was going to ask you. It comes from Tony Jeffries, who's at Buzz Jeffries. What do you think of Chambers coming back from a good loan and forming a midfield holding pair with Torreira?
Listen, I want Chambers back in the squad, actually. I've thought about it long and hard and considered if we should sell him. But I think let's get him back. He can play centre-half. He can play central midfield. He's homegrown qualifying as an English player. He's under contract probably forever, given the amount of contracts we've given him recently. So let's give him a year as part of the squad, give him some game time.
There's a potential right back.
Yeah, that has occurred to me as well, just as we were chatting about it then. I mean, he wasn't brilliant in that position, but he's a couple of years older now, so who knows. But I think as a central midfielder, I think that might be, or centre-half, possibly, what's most interesting. I definitely was impressed with him at central midfield in Fulham. Every time I saw him, I thought, oh, he's faring much better than I would have imagined in that position. So let's see. I think let's see what we can do with him. And if it doesn't work out, he's still under contract for a few years, we can sell him at that point. But I think given the amount of work we need to do on the squad, he could be someone who might save us a bit of trouble. What about you?
I think keep him in the squad, but I would worry about him in central midfield, to be honest. I think if we want to play a more athletic game in that area of the pitch, I don't know that that's really his oeuvre, if you like. I think probably as a central defender, he has something to offer this squad. A, not Mustafi. B, sure. I think when he came into the team last year towards the second half or towards the end of the season, I think he did quite well. I mean, he did well in the semi-final in Madrid when we lost, but he did play quite well in that game. He
did, yeah.
So
a decent end to the last season.
I think there's enough potential still in him as a defender for us to keep him in the squad because, of course, he helps with the homegrown rules as well and would add some depth. And he might allow, let's say, Mavropanos to go out on loan, and then we can see what kind of a player we've got there, because at the moment we just have no idea. There's a sort of a hope in the air that Mavropanos can be something brilliant, but we've only ever seen him play 4 or 5 games for us, and we just, at this point cannot make any real assessment on what sort of a player he is or what he might become, and he needs to play. So maybe Chambers could help there. So yeah, I'd keep him in the squad for next season.
My only sort of caveat with Chambers is that, when I look at the squad, I feel like we lack a certain physical intensity, and he doesn't strike me as someone who closes that gap necessarily. But
no, I agree, but
he still could have his use, I think.
Yeah, in a summer where we have a lot of stuff to do, keeping Chambers could provide more resources for other more pressing matters, if that makes sense. Here's the question I was going to ask you. This comes from good_evening, who's at G-evening on Twitter. Good evening. He says, a lot of people say we need to spend money and blame Kroenke. Considering we spent 18 million on Perez, 35 million on Mustafi. He has 40 million for Xhaka, but I think Xhaka was 35 million as well. 30 million on Mickey. We didn't spend 30 million on Mickey, but we swapped a player we could have sold for 50 million the previous summer. 4 million on Takuma Asano. Surely our scouts have a lot to answer for. And, to add to that, of course, we did buy Aubameyang for 55 million, and we did spend the guts of 50 million pounds on Alexandre Lacazette. So as much as our distaste for the owner and his apparent disinterest or uninterest, or lack of interest, I should say, in Arsenal, we all have our issues with that. But is the bigger issue how we have bought players and also how we've sold them or not sold them? So it's more to do with the people who are making the football decisions at the club, rather than Kroenke being a kind of obstruction to us spending money or anything else.
Yeah, I think that's a point really well made. And also, as frustrated as we might be by Kroenke, it's not necessarily something it's really within our power to change. We have to focus on what we can affect as a club and what we can do, and we haven't really done our business sufficiently well. And I think the concern is the Mislintat signings within the last couple of years are the ones that are sort of relatively impressive. Think of Torreira, Guendouzi, Aubameyang to an extent, Leno. Those are the right kind of acquisition. But beyond that, big questions. And I think that maybe is why there's a bit of concern about the fact that we might be appointing someone internally, Francis Kagigao, as our head of recruitment. Because ultimately there's someone who's been part of that regime.
Yeah.
Not right at the top of it, but part of it over the last few years. And definitely, we haven't bought particularly well, as a rule over the last few years. I mean, there was a great piece that Tim from 7am Kickoff wrote on his blog about Unai Emery's first season in charge. I don't know if you've had a chance to have a look at it yet.
I opened it yesterday, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
One of the things that he talks about in that is the transfer spend last summer and how that's, although we recouped a lot of money in January and the previous summer as well with Oxlade-Chamberlain, we have spent quite a lot of money and we haven't necessarily seen a dramatic upturn in our form as a consequence. And I do think we could be more efficient, undoubtedly, in the way that we spend money. So I don't know, again, we come back to my old scenario of pinning all my hopes on Edu, but it really does feel like that's going to be a massive determining factor for us, how successfully and how quickly he can kind of get a grip on things.
Yeah. Look, we clearly need to buy better. I mean, I think you told the story, didn't you, on the podcast that when it came to Lucas Perez, there was opposition. Would it be fair to say?
Oh yeah, no, I mean definitely
within the club there were people telling Arsene Wenger, "Don't do it. This guy is not the guy that you want him to be," basically. But we went and
I'm not even sure who ultimately, pushed the button to sign Lucas Perez. But I do know that there were scouts in Spain, Francis Kagigao included, who essentially recommended to the club, this is a mid-table level player. This is not a Champions League caliber player. And it ultimately has turned out that way.
Yeah. We also really, really need to sell better. And to be fair, that is something that Sanyehi has spoken about in the last little while, about how you can't let a Ramsey situation develop again, and you can't let a Welbeck situation develop again, and you can't do, what we did with Alexis Sanchez again. I remember at the time thinking, you know what, I'm actually okay with us keeping him going into the final year of his contract, because I didn't necessarily trust us to go and spend the money in the right way if we did sell him. But we completely fudged it, of course. We fucked it completely up. If we'd just been straight up and said, no, we're not going to sell you, that's it. Instead, we bent at the last minute, didn't we? And we had that ridiculous bid for Thomas Lemar. And then there was the talk of Manchester City. He'd been up there, apparently, Alexis, and then it fell through at the last minute. It was such a disaster. It was just such a badly managed situation, as is the Ramsey situation, as is the Welbeck situation, even the Oxlade-Chamberlain situation, who we got reasonable money for. Why was it done when it was done? Why was it not done sooner than that? We had that shambolic display at Anfield, if you remember, and he sort of ambled about the pitch, playing against a club he knew he was going to be joining a couple of days later. A bad situation. You can criticize his performance all you want, and I think that's entirely justified. But it's a really shit situation to put a player in, So in terms of how we manage our departures and how we manage our sales, I think that's got to be an area that we do better with. So there.
What about this question from
Okay.
Penultimo? Not one I anticipated. At Penultimo11 on Twitter. Should we bring Akpom home? He's had a very fine season in Greece, and regardless of level, we could certainly use his commitment and work rate.
No. I mean, we sold him, didn't we? It's not a case of, like, we bring him back on loan and give him a place in the squad. We sold him, and he's gone to Greece and done really, really well. And it's a fantastic story, you know, to have scored the winner in a cup final and to... Did they do the double, I think?
They did do the double, yeah.
It's PAOK he's playing for, right? So,
it is PAOK.
Yeah, so, you know, what a great story for him. But, you know, why do we feel this need all the time when any player leaves and does something vaguely good to go, bring him home? We've missed out here. Clearly the reason Chuba Akpom didn't play, you know, hardly at all for Arsenal, it was just a mistake. It was a mistake. We just didn't see what he had. And now we should bring him back and he will bloom again. Maybe it's the fact that he's playing in a league which suits his level a bit better, you know? And I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to do that.
I concur. I mean, he'll be 24 in October. I'm delighted for him that it's panning out well for him. I thought he was a little bit unlucky at Arsenal, had some big injuries and came close to scoring for the first team on a number of occasions. But it was the same when Benik Afobe first went out, you know, and was at Wolves and scoring lots of goals and at MK Dons. And people said, let's bring him back. And you know, I can't even remember quite where Benik Afobe is right now. I know that he got loaned out from Bournemouth. He went to Stoke, poor guy.
Oh my God!
So, you know, it just shows you that's, you know, it's sometimes players are flourishing because they're playing at the right level.
Yeah,
and it doesn't necessarily mean we've made the wrong decision.
Exactly. There was a lot of that when Afobe was scoring goals for Wolves, and it was like, well, he's, you know, look at him, he's scoring all the time, but yeah, he's scoring in League One or the Championship or something, you know. So, you can rue the good ones you let go, but I think some of the ones who have gone and done well elsewhere are doing so because they're down a level or two. We had a load of questions today about Jurgen Klopp, whether, you know, we should have hired him back in the day. When we had the opportunity, and I don't know that it would do us any good to discuss the potential of that. Yeah, because it's all speculation. Nevertheless, I'm going to ask you a question which requires you to speculate completely and utterly. It comes from Liam Kent, who's at Liam K Football, who says, "Do you think we'd have had more of an identity now if we'd gone with Arteta? Do you think Emery's habit of changing his selections formations is part of this? We criticised Wenger for not doing that, so is there perhaps a happy medium?"
I think we probably would have a clearer identity. I'm not sure Emery's a type of coach who's ever going to really have a very coherent, very clear style. And I think we're guessing and we're projecting with Arteta, but someone who's been kind of schooled by Guardiola, to an extent schooled by Wenger. And let's not forget his incredibly enthralling spell under David Moyes. I think, there probably would be a more sort of obvious playing style from him at this point. I'm not saying we'd necessarily be more successful with it, but I just get the impression that he might be more of a kind of ideology manager than the one we have right now. Do you think so?
I think he probably would have, yeah. I think he would have been. You know, to be fair to Emery, he kind of was when he arrived. I think we all bought into the idea, or were certainly encouraged by the idea of a coach who was tactically flexible, because, you know, the criticism of Wenger was he does it his way. He's completely dogmatic about it, and he doesn't change enough on a game-to-game basis. And then when he did start to muddle around with things like the back three and changing, you know, formations and what have you, we ended up with basically our worst season ever under him. So, you know, he was trying to be something that he's not. And I think he got caught between two stools, and I think in some ways that hastened his departure. You know, that was a part of it. I mean, look, it had run its course and everything else, but, you know, I really feel, and I know we spoke about this on the podcast last week about if we are going to go with a relatively young refresh of the squad, I do think you need some kind of identity as a football club in terms of how you play the game. I mean, that was always true of Arsenal under Wenger, wasn't it? That the youth teams
played in the same system.
Played in the same
approach.
system. So, they were brought up so that when they got to the first team, if they got to the first team, they understood. But it was this idea that a footballing identity runs through the very heart of the club. This is how we want to play. This is what we want to do. You can still be tactically flexible, and you can be perhaps a bit more open to other ideas than Wenger was, or you could concentrate on certain areas maybe a bit more than he did, but that identity was right there. We don't have that right now. I'm not sure that we're going to have it under Emery because of his comments about how he wants us to be a chameleon team, which is one that can change from time to time. But why do chameleons change their colours? Because they're scared. Isn't that what they do it for?
Lovely. That's beautiful. That's a lovely thing to say. I agree.
So
it's a reactive thing.
Yeah. But I think probably where we need to go next season, I don't have any real faith is not the wrong word, but I don't really believe that Emery, next season is going to all of a sudden transform into the kind of coach who plays in one way, or at least builds a platform on one way of playing.
No, that doesn't feel realistic, does it?
No, and to an extent, he seemed to compromise himself a bit during this season, though, no? When we started, what were the things that he talked about? Playing out from the back, high pressing, intensity, work rate off the ball, and then when we get the ball, let's get forward and let's use our attacking talents. Over the course of the season, whether by accident or design, or whether because he had to be a bit more pragmatic in the way that he approached fixtures or approached, his team selections with the squad as he got to understand it better, we kind of stopped playing out from the back in the same way. The pressing was here or there sometimes, so the things that he started last season with, that we all kind of went, ooh, that's different and that could be good if we keep doing that, just sort of fell away. So I feel like if that's capable of happening over the course of one season, I don't see how, a couple of weeks off in the summer and a few new players in and a few players out is going to radically change that. No,
nor do I. I suppose the only cause for sort of optimism, if you can call it that, is that I think I would concur with your point of view that Emery sort of sacrificed what appeared to be his principles at kind of the midpoint in the season, and made a lot of sort of short-term moves, including the reintegration of Ozil and Ramsey. And actually, I'm not disputing that brought about a decent period of form and some of our better football. But I think it weirdly kind of set his own plans back somewhat, and I can only hope that this summer provides a bit of a reset for him. I feel like I'm using that word a lot on this podcast at the moment, reset, but it almost feels like that's what's required for the club.
Yeah, look, we'll have to wait and see, but I think again, coming back to your Lord and Saviour Edu,
sure,
who will make everything better. In Edu we trust. Sanyehi basically said that it's Edu's job to create or to identify the club's identity, right? That's his job, is to drive the identity of the football. So when Edu comes in, he's obviously going to look at the coach, he's going to look at the players, and he's going to decide, we assume, what kind of footballing identity Arsenal are going to have. You would like to think that as somebody who played under Wenger and enjoyed success under Wenger and saw what it did for Arsenal, that his outlook is to, I don't mean replicate that, but to be a much more front-footed team than we appear to be at this moment in time. You know, a team that will go and attack and will try and play nice football, built on a good defensive platform as we had during the Invincible season. You know, it might have been a back four put together that nobody really expected, but it worked and it allowed that team to play the kind of football that they do. So I'm slightly hopeful that when Edu comes, he will start to impose that identity. And if he feels like Unai Emery is not the manager to implement it, then we'll go with a different one. And I think that's kind of where we are. And maybe, you know, as you say, a 2-year stabilization under Unai Emery might just leave us in the position where that man is available, or it's the right time for that man to come in.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I agree with you about us hopefully being more front-footed next season, because I don't think any of us believe whoever we sign, we can sufficiently improve our defence to enable us to become some sort of watertight, you know, counter-attacking unit. We are a team who are probably still going to need to be more progressive, more aggressive, play higher up the pitch, you know, in order to have any chance of success. So it's mad, isn't it? You know, there's so many different ways this summer could go. And I almost think that the fact that our identity as a team is quite fluid, it almost makes it impossible to predict. You know, we don't even know what kind of shape or shapes will be lining up with next season, let alone the personnel that will fill in the gaps.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think they know at this point what they want to do. Do we want to build a team around a back four? In which case, you know, the business we do in the transfer market will be absolutely crucial in that regard. But, you know, as you say, it's June already. You know, it's going to be, 4 or 5 weeks before Arsenal head off to the US on pre-season tour, where you would imagine some of the new players are going to be, and some of the players who are with us right now won't be anymore. So, you know, I think a lot is going to happen quite quickly. Well, it has to. It has to.
So.
It has to start happening now. So, so there. Look, we're nearly an hour into this part 2, so I'm going to call it quits here. Apart from this one final question, which I think is the most pressing issue of the day, it comes from Chris Tironi, who of course was the host of the Ars America podcast, no longer podcasting, but there you go. He says, how many pairs of sunglasses should a person own? 1? More than 2? What's your answer?
Well, I saw, because you had a discussion with him about this. He lost his one pair of sunglasses, right?
Yeah.
And you said, I can't believe you've only got one, or something along those lines.
Yes, I can't believe.
So how many do you feel is appropriate?
I feel you need at least 2 pairs. At least
really?
2. Yeah.
I think I've only got one. But I wear normal glasses a lot of the time.
Oh, that's true.
So, I mean, really what I need is like clip-ons, you know.
The little clip-on ones.
But I've only got one pair. I actually haven't even recovered. I've not had sufficient cause to get them out of wherever they're kept this year.
Yeah, but you don't need sunglasses just for sunny days.
When do you need them then?
Whenever
when you're hiding as a celebrity?
Yeah, but whenever it's too bright or too glary, not necessarily sunny. If you've got, you know, a bit of a headache, sunglasses are good for that. You need a pair in the car, don't you? Just in case you get blinded by the sun as you're driving along, you need a pair in the car.
Could happen.
And then, of course, you need more than one pair, because most of the time I can't find them. So you need to find the other pair. Where's my fucking sunglasses?
Well, that's it.
Where are my fucking
I don't even know where my
glasses?
Sunglasses are.
That's the way. I mean, I can't, like, my reading glasses that I need these days for reading, they drive me fucking mental. Because I can't find them.
Because you don't know where they are.
Yeah. Where are my fucking glasses?
You could get one of those sort of... Yeah, that happens. I'm wearing them often. But you could get one of those sort of strings, you know, like older people often have their glasses like on a string around their neck. Do you think you could rock that look?
No. I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I'm not sure. I appreciate the implication there, James. But there you go. I'll let it slide for now.
I'm just trying to help you out. I just don't want you to,
I
keep
appreciate
your glasses.
that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no
All
worries.
right.
No worries.
Okay, well, look, we will have an Arsecast on Friday of some description, or at least I'll do my very best to get a podcast together. Who knows? We might make lots of signings between now and then. But either way, James and I will be back on Monday next week for another Arsecast Extra. So until then, I'm just going to insert the recording of James saying bye-bye.
Bye-bye.